せーの。
Hey guys, what's up? Hey guys, what's up? It's a Closure Detective here investigating your favorite animes, and today I'm going to do an anime review on Nisemonogatari. Nisemonogatari is the second part to the one and only Monogatari series. It's technically not the second part, not chronologically, nor in release order when it comes to light novel, but is the second part when it comes to anime release order. So, the Monogatari series is originally a light novel written by Nisio Isin, the legendary, one and only Nisio Isin, and then it is adapted by Studio Shaft into an anime. I have talked about Bakemonogatari earlier this year, and I really enjoyed Bakemonogatari, even though it is a really weird anime. It is easily the wordiest anime I've ever seen. There's a lot of dialogue. There is a lot of dialogue, and also the art style, the editing is super unconventional. We have flashes of words and imageries, and the art style is very colorful but also very empty. It's like all the characters exist in an empty ghost town or something, which is actually something that I really like. It just adds a layer of surrealism to the atmosphere of the story and the anime, which I really love. But overall, I actually enjoyed Bakemonogatari more than I had expected. It was really enjoyable. The characters are actually well written, and the interactions are often very interesting and intriguing. It comes with layers. Now we have the second part to Bakemonogatari, Nisemonogatari. Nisemono means the fake one, or a fake thing, a fake person, a faker, an imposter, if you will. And monogatari means story, so this is impostory. and bakemono is monster, so that is like monstory, you know, wordplay, you know. So first of all, I have to talk about the openings. We have episodes 1 and 3 also have the same opening, and that is Futakotome. And it's basically Stable Part 2. And it looks fine. You know, we got the staple animation, and the singing is fine, but it's just nowhere near as good as, Stable, the OG thing. But we also have the Karen BOP. So in this season of anime, it is separated into two parts. The first 7 episodes is called Karen B, and the last 4 episodes is called Tsukihi Phoenix. Karen and Tsukihi are the elder and younger sisters of the main character Koyomi Araragi, respectively. And Karen B is the first arc, and Karen B has her own OP, and that is Marshmallow Justice. And I don't think the song is all that great, to be honest. It is a fun, energetic, passionate rock song, and it doesn't sound generic at all, but it just doesn't stand out as much as a Renai Circulation or a Sugar Sweet Nightmare or Staple Stable, which is one of my favorites so far. But the animation is fine, and overall it is very energetic. It really fits the tone of Karen. So there is that. We also have the ED by Claris out of all bands, and this ED is nowhere near as glorious or as nostalgic or as powerful as the ED to Bakemonogatari by Supercell. But still, it's fun, it's jumpy, it's still somewhat nostalgic and wholesome, and I still enjoy it quite a bit. So, on the musical side of things, this is solid. The soundtrack is actually really good still. So now we have the story itself, and I won't say that I like Nisemonogatari more than Bake. I think Nise is a little bit more slow paced, and one thing that immediately stands out to me after I watched Nise is that it has a lot of sexual harassing. And it's just not one character harassing another character sexually. Everybody harasses each other. Um, nearly everyone. And it's I mean, yeah, Bakemonogatari also has a lot of sexual harassment, but not as much as Nisei. It's just Nisei has like a sexual harassment scene almost every single episode, and it's pretty uncomfortable to watch. And usually when this kind of shit happens in a TV show, I wouldn't immediately say that the TV show is bad or anything. You know, you got to look at the context. And in this context, I think these sexual harassment scenes, while yeah, it's uncomfortable to watch and it's difficult to look past them, I'd like to say that I feel like it is part of the design of the anime, really, because of its whimsical and surreal quality. And also, none of the characters in this story is good, as in ethically good. Like, all of the characters have done something bad at some point, aside from, I guess, Hachikuji Mayoi. So, yeah, it would make sense that the main character of Araragi Koyomi is a man of justice, yeah, but is he though? Can he still escape his lust for girls and other people? I don't know. Another thing I really don't like about Nisemonogatari is that characters like Hanekawa Tsubasa took a back seat in the story. Similarly, we have Sengoku Nadeko, played by Kana Hanazawa. And she also took a bit of a back seat, even though she briefly showed up on episode 1. Hachikuji Mayoi, yeah, she's still a ghost. She didn't experience any character development in this anime, in this season at all. She just kind of is there for some reason. But, however, we are also introduced to several other characters, and they're all really interesting. And the thing I love the most about Nisemonogatari is that Nisemonogatari is called Nisemonogatari for a reason, because there's a theme of what's fake and what's real. And that theme is constantly being echoed in the story, all the way from the character of Kaiki Deishu. Slowly becoming one of my personal favorites of the entire series. Kaiki Deishu is a con man. He is a fake. Nisemono. At the same time, we have Karen and Tsukihi, who are the Fire Sisters. And the Fire Sisters are also women, girls of justice. And Koyomi calls them fake as well, because they're fake justice. They're not actually finding justice for justice. But essentially, we have the theme of what's fake and what's real and justice being constantly echoed in this anime, which makes it so coherent. Episodes 1 to 2 are actually really boring episodes. I mean, they're not the most boring thing I've ever watched, but in these 2 episodes, nothing happens. Nothing happens. There's no conflict, there's no confrontation, there's no stakes, nothing happened. Essentially, Koyomi Araragi visits Sengoku, he visits Kambaru Suruga, and that's it. You know, it gets sexual, but you know, that is it essentially. Episode 2 is also pretty boring. Not much happens, and then we have episode 3 where things actually start happening, where we finally meet the character of Kaiki Deishu. I knew that his character is going to show up at some point, but I didn't know that he's going to show up this early in Nisemonogatari. And he is an amazing villain. As far as villains go, as far as anime villains go, he is got to be one of the best ones I've seen so far, because the truth is he's not exactly a villain. He is just a con man doing his job. Conning, lying. And yeah, lying is bad, but he treats it as a business, as a job. And there's just something about Kaiki Deishu that's just so unvillain-like. His face is so deadpan and sad and full of despair sometimes, which is kind of funny. And he's also kind of honest about his dishonesty. When Araragi Koyomi confronted him, he was actually honest about lying to people. He just told Koyomi all of his schemes, because honestly, he doesn't give a shit at all. So Kaiki Deishu, really interesting character. And then we have episode 4, where we have this very controversial scene. A super long scene where Koyomi Araragi basically has a conversation with Oshino Shinobu, the blonde hair lolly vampire girl who's like 800 years old or something. And throughout the entire Bakemonogatari, she did not speak one single word. But in this scene, she actually spoke. And wow. I kind of understand why this scene is so controversial. After all, the main character is literally naked with a vampire girl hiding inside his shadow, also completely naked, and have a conversation for like 15 minutes. I know why it's controversial, but in this scene, Oshino Shinobu weren't sexualized at all. There weren't any shots that deliberately try to sexualize her. Rather, it just feels like a very spiritual moment, like a master speaking to his servant, or another person speaking to another person who has bad blood between them. That being said, I'd like to say that I haven't watched the Nisemonogatari trilogy, so I'm gonna watch those 3 movies next. But anyways, back to Nisemonogatari. We have this very long bath scene, and we learn way more about Oshino Shinobu, and she's a bit of a mysterious character, which is something that I really, really like. Anyways, we have episodes 5 to 6, which are 2 episodes that are also somewhat slow-paced, not really all that memorable. On episode 5, we learn more about Kaiki Deishu, where essentially Karen has a fever. And the reason why Karen has a fever is because she's cursed by a curse called the Wreath Fire Bee. And she is cursed by Kaiki Deishu. After Karen found out that Kaiki Deishu was responsible for selling curses in a secondary school, Karen tried to take revenge by finding him and punching him, which did not work out. So Kaiki Deishu cursed her with the bee curse. So we learn more about that. On episode 6, we have Koyomi Araragi and Senjo Gahara Hitagi, his girlfriend, basically preparing to fight Kaiki Deishu. And while that episode is also somewhat boring, there is a scene that I just find so visually striking, and that is the scene where Senjo Gahara has a conversation with Koyomi Araragi, where we have the Tower of Pencils and the tower topples, and it's just a very beautiful scene. Anyways, episode 7 is the climax episode of the arc, where they confront Kaiki Deishu, and that was a really good confrontation. I mean, nothing dramatic happened, but interesting conversation took place. And I really love it when TV shows focus on more interpersonal relationships and the drama that entails, and it's just very intricate and I love it. Also, before that, we have a fight between Karen and Koyomi Araragi, and it is a brother-sister fight, and it was a very brutal one. And it was also a very memorable fight because this is an important point in the character development of Karen. Karen essentially is a very impulsive, violent, energetic, tomboyish girl, and she is always pitting against Koyomi, mainly because Koyomi, the main character of the story, is always bullying and verbally insulting Karen, and so they're not necessarily they don't necessarily like each other. But after this fight, Karen and Koyomi started to learn to respect each other, and so this is a really important scene. And finally, we have the ending to episode 7, where a lot of people on the internet has believed that Koyomi and Hitagi Senjo Gahara had sex, because of all these subtle lines where Senjo Gahara Hitagi was like, you won't be able to sleep tonight, and be gentle with me tonight, and all that. And also the fact that on the next episode, Koyomi Araragi returns home early in the morning, which means that he's probably somewhere else at night. And it wasn't clarified if they had sex or not. I just thought it's funny how the story is so confused. And then we have the last 4 episodes, Tsukihi Phoenix. Unlike Karen, Tsukihi actually is more soft and elegant. But she's also kind of psychotic. She brings out a knife sometimes. She brings out a weapon sometimes. She's kind of fucking crazy. And first of all, let's talk about the opening of Platinum Disco. Wow. Actually, Platinum Disco is my favorite OP of the entire Monogatari series so far. I've seen Kogarashi Sentiment and Moso Express and Mathemagics. Those 3 are actually my favorites. But so far, Platinum Disco is the best one. And the song is really catchy and groovy, of course, but the visuals is amazing. It's very visually pleasing. Essentially, we are transported into a kaleidoscope of hands and legs and Tsukihi's face, her hair, her smile, and it's just a kaleidoscope. She just constantly changes, and it's so vibrant, it's so colorful, and it's just visual candy. It's eye candy for the eyes. It looks amazing. And the way Araragi Koyomi is portrayed in this OP, he's sort of blackened, and it sort of highlights the aloneness of his character, which is really interesting. He's always standing still, he's always pale looking, he's always very inactive and passive in this OP, and I really like that shot where he opens his mouth and it reveals a small Tsukihi inside his mouth, and then he closes his mouth, and then the camera moves up to his eyes, and it's amazing, and it just has so much style, so much personality, and I just really love the changing hairstyles of Tsukihi. Platinum Disco is a masterpiece of an opening. But anyways, we have episode 8, where we have the infamous toothbrush scene, is where essentially Karen wants to meet Kambaru Suruga, who is also a very energetic tomboy girl. And Araragi Koyomi didn't want to do that. Didn't want Karen to meet Kambaru Suruga. So he proposed a deal. He's gonna brush Karen's teeth, and if Karen withstands it for 5 minutes, Koyomi is going to allow them both to meet. And so we have the toothbrush scene, and wow, it's such a long scene. It's such a long scene. And it's so sexual, it's so erotic. And it's legendary because it's, when you think about it, it doesn't seem sexual. Like it's only brushing teeth, it's only teeth brushing. It doesn't sound sexual. But the way it is animated, it's so sexual and so erotic. And I don't know how to feel about it. On one hand, it's very uncomfortable to watch. And also, I recently reviewed Sword Art Online, and I complained the whole incestuous relationship in the second arc. I'm going to be honest here, Nisemonogatari is even more incestuous than Sword Art Online. But one thing about this scene that I like is that there's almost a literal angle to it. Like, putting aside all the eroticness and the sexuality of that scene, there's a literal angle of what sexuality really is. Anyways, we move on to episode 9, which is somewhat slow-paced. So essentially, Araragi Koyomi presents Karen to Kambaru Suruga. But we didn't really see much interactions between those two, so that was kind of disappointing. But essentially on this episode, we are introduced to 2 new characters by the name of Kagenui and Ononoki Yotsuki, who is actually voiced by Saori Hayami, who has a very soft, gentle voice. She also voiced Shinobu in Demon Slayer, and also I forgot her name. I don't know why did I suddenly forget her name. Jabami Yumeko. That is her name. And so Saori Hayami is actually always typecast as a character with a very soft and gentle voice, but essentially she plays Ononoki Yotsuki in this series, and her voice is so much deeper and so much more deadpan. It literally breaks typecast, and it's brilliant. We also have Kagenui's character, who always jumps. She does not walk, she does not run. All she does is jumping. So she always has to be at a high place so that she could jump from one spot to another. And that's quirky. And we also have Yotsuki, again, Ononoki Yotsuki. For every sentence she says, she has to end the sentence with, "I said that with a posed look," which is also a very fun quirk. But essentially, the reason why these two characters are there is because they want to exterminate an immortal creature. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but that creature is someone who is close to Araragi Koyomi. So on episode 10, we have Araragi Koyomi finally finding out what is the purpose of these two new characters. There is also one more confrontation with Kaiki Deishu, which is a very interesting conversation. Every time Kaiki Deishu is on screen, it's an entertaining scene. And then we have the fight at the end of episode 10, which is really interesting, given how Oshino Shinobu, the lolly vampire girl, suddenly showed up and helped Araragi Koyomi. And on episode 11, she transformed from a lolly girl to a teenager. And that's... Yes. But, yeah, we have the final fight. And wow. That fight is so fucking violent. It's... Not even kidding. I mean, I've seen... As far as violent fights go, like, I've seen Torohedoro, I've seen Attack on Titan. When it gets violent, it does get pretty violent. And Jujutsu Kaisen has a lot of violence too. But, man, this fight has got to be up there. This is actually pretty fucking violent. Wow. Kagenui was really powerful. For some reason. And the fight was very violent, and Koyomi Araragi didn't even fight back. But he managed to survive because he's actually half vampire, half human. And we also have Shinobu versus Yotsuki. And this fight is actually really satisfying. Nobody won. Everybody survived. Nobody won. Technically, Koyomi won. But everybody survived, and it ended on a really strong note because it's concluded in a way where Kagenui basically decided to leave because she allows this exception. And Kagenui also didn't sense that Koyomi actually wanted to kill her. So there's something somewhat wholesome about the ending, which I really like. And yeah, that's it for the arc. If there's one thing about this arc that I kind of don't like, is that this arc doesn't even feel all that related to Tsukihi Araragi, even though her name is literally in the name of the arc itself. So I wish I could have seen more of her, maybe. But yeah, overall, I still enjoy a good chunk of Nisemonogatari. There are still tons of highlights. A lot of interactions are amazing. The voice acting is amazing. Kamiya Hiroshi is, once again, one of the best voice actors working in the anime industry nowadays. And him as Koyomi Araragi is fantastic. Saito Chiwa as Senjoka Hitagi is very charismatic. Horie Yui as Hanekawa Tsubasa. Okay, let's talk about Hanekawa Tsubasa a little bit. She didn't show up a lot in this season, but her character still underwent some very interesting changes, which is kind of awesome. Like those little subtleties and details is what make me really appreciate the writing of Nishio Isin. On episode 6, Senjogara Hitagi basically called Hanekawa Tsubasa Hanekawa-sama, and basically talked about how she looked up to her. And that's kind of surprising. I mean, it's not like Senjogara is that powerful of a character, but she is still very powerful, mostly due to her confidence. Now, what's so powerful about Hanekawa Tsubasa that could break her confidence? That we don't know yet. And then on episode 9, when Koyomi decided to give Hanekawa Tsubasa a call, Hanekawa Tsubasa knew where Araragi Koyomi was actually going to, when Koyomi didn't even tell her. And we kind of don't know why. And it's these little details that makes her character so much more intriguing and layered, without even putting her on screen. And that's just really special and magical, in my opinion. But yeah, Horie Yui as Hanekawa Tsubasa, pretty cool. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. Good show, good story. Sure, there are some slow and boring moments here and there, and there are definitely uncomfortable moments. But it's all built into the design of the show. It's surreality, it's surrealism, really. So yeah, I'm giving Nisemonogatari a light to decent 8 out of 10. I'm liking it. So, have you watched Nisemonogatari? From 1 to 10, how much you rate it? Like it and subscribe if you want more. And thanks for watching.